the Western Cape is still recovering from storms that left a trail of destruction. Roads and bridges in some areas collapsed or were washed away following these heavy rains and flash floods. What's the focus then as the week begins and mop-up operations are underway? eNCA's Kevin Brandt has more from Solaris Pass. Thank you so much, Kevin, again for your time this morning. Of course, we heard from you earlier, devastation in so many parts of the Western Cape, but those mop-up operations are underway. And we also know that in Hermanus, the Whale Festival was cancelled, a very big festival every year taking place in that town. So a lot of businesses also losing out on money, and across the Western Cape, a lot of businesses are still counting those costs. And we know the provincial government also said, they estimate, there's still a lot of calculations that need to be done, but it could be 1.4 billion rand in damages and costs. But what's the latest you can tell us there?
A very good morning to you. The line was not so clear, breaking up a bit, and I'm also here in Solaris Pass, where construction work behind me is underway in the eNCA informal settlement, where many residents here, initial estimates about 35 to 40 structures were affected by the flooding and the rainstorm in this particular area. It's now called the epicenter of the severe weather conditions within the city of Cape Town Metropolitan. A lot of work is now being directed here from the city as well as the Western Cape provincial government to assist some of the residents who've now had to make their way to a local community hall being housed there. But behind me you can see a lot of work being undertaken to clear some of the soil away that washed down to this community. Here towards my left also you can see some of the homes earlier on when we were here virtually covered, completely underwater. The water's now subsided, and just basically the top structures of these homes are now sticking out, even up to door level. There are some areas on the front side of these homes where you can really see the devastation that this flood has caused within this community here. Work underway now between the provincial as well as national government. The officials were in this community to come and assess the extent of the damage, but also now to narrow down numbers in terms of people that need assistance, people who need their homes rebuilt. Some of them are being housed in the local community. Others opted to rather stay with family and friends within this area here. But a lot of work needs to be undertaken to come to the aid of these residents here. So the officials say that basically the big work will now start as of tomorrow. They've now have more or less an indication in terms of how many people have been affected. Further assessments will be taking place to then start with the relocation process. What's holding up that relocation process is identifying a specific piece of land within this community. Understandably, people would not want to move away. They've been living here for a number of years, and they would want to live in this very community. Still, officials say that they obviously cannot stay in an area such as this is obviously prone to flooding and adverse weather conditions. And the issue now is, or the focus is, to identify that piece of land to then start with the relocation of these residents here. But I'm joined by one of the community members affected by the flooding and the storm. His house is just further towards my left behind us. Can you tell us how has your home been affected during the flood that we've experienced here this week?
Yeah, ndithetha nje ndikunhlonelo, ndingomnye wabantu abangenelwe ngamanzi endlini. Itsho nje ndilala emotweni ngaphandle, imoto yami yoqhumelelekile, andikwazi, ndicela nencedo kuloo nto leyo. Impahla, ifurniture, yonke nje into, everything is damaged. So I need help. Kuba ke asazi uba singathini. Kuyabanda, siba simililo, sihlala phandle, asinandawo zolala.
And tell me, did you stay within this community, or did you, after the flood, or did you have to move out and now come back when the water has subsided in this area?
Yeah, ndingatsho ndifuna ukuhamba kule ndawo ndimuve because kumanzi andikwazi uhlala nabantwana kunzima bayagula, so ndicela incedo uba ndingaphuma kule ndawo ndikhutshwe because kunzima.
Thank you very much for that insight into how you've been affected by the storm. This resident explaining that his property was completely damaged. It basically looks like the one just here behind me. saying that a lot of water damage, his furniture was also damaged within this flood that we've experienced here. A lot of the residents have the same story, also saying that he moved out to forced basically to move to a different area and can now, when we've experienced much better weather conditions here within the Western Cape, the sun is out and obviously the soil can now dry. He's made his way back to this community to try and see what of his furniture and his belongings he can salvage. Indications from many of these residents are that they've lost basically everything, crying out for help from the authorities, which I believe is now in a process of trying to narrow down exactly how many people need help and to see to what extent they can come to their aid. Back to you.
And Kevin, you mentioned earlier that, there's plans now to relocate that community or certain members of that community that, of course, were severely affected by those floods, as you pointed out, those homes being wrecked, and also the provincial government now planning to relocate those people. But how are the people feeling? What do they say? Are they fine with moving to a different area?
Well, they will basically stay within this Salaris Pass village, as it's known also here in the 8 informal settlement. It just cannot be at this exact place, as the officials indicated. It will be somewhere within this precinct here, and also indicating that that process will be undertaken during the course of this week to identify a specific portion of land. My understanding is that it has been identified. There's also obviously a lot of processes legally and red tape when it comes to the city acquiring land where they can place these individuals who've been affected by the storm. But they won't be, put very far from this area. It will still be within this village, as many of them have been staying in this area for at least 10, 20, 30 years on and not wanting to move any further. So that is basically the process that will be unfolding throughout the course of this week to, first of all, assess what they do need to rebuild their homes, and then to relocate them within a specific place here within Salaris Pass.
Thank you so much. Kevin Brandt, of course, in the Western Cape, Salaris Pass to be exact. Of course, one of those areas that were heavily affected by the recent floods and the rains. As we can see, the construction happening there, trying to remove the sand and also trying to rebuild whatever can be rebuilt. Of course, there are plans to also relocate some of those community members.